All right, we are live. Who all do we have in here early? Oh, yeah, lots of
That's a
folks
ton.
assembling. Sam Mountain Ballistics, Auto Salvage Outlaws, Bear Rose is here, NSB Custom Cars, JB's little shop. How are y'all doing? JB's getting over the flu. Good to hear. Tony's Hot Rod Garage. Scarlet the Four-Eyed Cuda and Testa Speed Shop. No Name 500 contenders there. Mohawk 62. Bad Tree Productions. He says $5. You'll pass tech every time.
He needs to wash. He needs to wash that bill before he hands it to me.
LP94 Lars is here. Buff's Garage is in the house. Colleen Tebow. Dizzy Izzy's here. Look out, Dizzy's here. Pure Pontiac Garage. Unfinished Project says Dart Sport. Dakota's Timeout is here. Buff is saying 251 days. 251 days indeed. First Responder Garage. First Responder Garage is putting a 6-pinion steel planetary in his 727 for a Durango. So I'm like, wow, you will never break that.
That's one piece that won't break.
No. Danny Boyd. Oh, goodness. Bigfoots and Mopars. Jackie Abbott. Busted Radial. Turbo Tom. Cope Racing.
We already got tech questions flying through there. You know, I don't know if you've seen Dakota's question. He wants to know if he can JB weld his lug nuts on.
Yeah. Track Travel with Rick. Jerry Racing. My mom's in here. Two Hacks Jeff. My aunt is in here. Check that out. All right. Ron English. Wow, I got a lot of folks in here. We got 47 already. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us. I don't see any tech questions yet other than JB weld the lug nuts on. The answer is no. One-Eyed Cat is here. Smacky. Thank you guys for joining us. We've got Dallas Brown, AHRA president in the house, and our special guest, Deke Denney. He is the AHRA tech official. Andrew Nelson, Nivlac 57 is here. Good to see all of you guys. We just wanted to try to have a live and let you guys ask questions and also just give Deke the floor to talk about things that maybe, observations from last year for those of you who were there and what might be helpful for this year and so forth and so on. And so we'll start with Chucky's question there because he has a good one.
Hold on, John. Instead of starting with the questions, why don't we start with the things that we already know? Because it's going to keep a lot of those things from being redundant.
Sure. And Chucky, we'll get to yours. Chucky's got a simple one. Do I need a roll cage? We'll come to it at some point. No problem. So what stuff would you like to start with, Deke? What would be the things that you saw the crowd last year and think it's probably substantially the same kind of things, just maybe more people? What should we start with?
Most of it's simple stuff. Of course, the helmets. No, a brand new bungee cord from Tractor Supply is not a good battery hold down. A few people thought that last year, and it's not true. If it's a factory hold down, fine, in the factory location, in good condition. And that means if I grab that battery and shake it, it don't move. If it's mounted somewhere else, a custom mount like for the rear, it needs to be 3/8 all thread normally is what you use. A piece of 1 1/4 angle iron, 3/16, and clamp that battery down solid so they don't move.
Okay.
I don't like. I saw some rubber straps, and the guys were pretty kind. They went back to their pit, and they got some stuff together, and they bolted them down good. Everything was pretty cool.
Good.
Another one was coolant overflow. I think the rule book says 16 ounces of overflow. Well, I like to see a little more than that, but a beer can ain't it. But a few guys had to put overflows on them. It's just common sense.
Okay, the other one I know was a big deal last year, just from memory, is antifreeze.
Yep, all straight water. We just want straight water in the hot rods.
Okay.
A couple of guys got a pass on that. One of them was Andy. He was in his SUV. It's a 2-year-old SUV. It's untouched. Is he going to change his coolant to water? No, probably ain't. The guy with the Mustang that flew down out of Canada, he's got a 1-year-old Mustang, no miles on it. He's not going to dump the water or dump the antifreeze, convert it to water. I get it. I understand it. And those are two of the least likely vehicles to leak. You know what I mean? But all the guys were actually pretty good about it. There was guys dumping antifreeze in pans, converting them over to water, so they did real good with that.
Okay.
Another thing I like to see is I don't like to see 5/16 fuel line connecting your transmission to your radiator cooler. I mean,
you talking about rubber hose? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. 5/16 fuel line. If you use a heavy nylon style line that's made for pressure, and I still like to see that at a minimum, 3 to 6 inches total, where the metal line hooks in, because you can't hook it direct for obvious reasons on a lot of these cars. So just real short pieces with really good clamps. But fuel line ain't it. John, you do transmissions. Them trannies get 150 PSI.
Yeah.
On a 100 degree day.
It's funny that these guys they don't want to run, fuel hose rated for a mechanical pump when they're running fuel injection, but then they'll run it on a transmission that might run 200 PSI.
Right, exactly.
So I get that.
Okay. And everything, for the most part, all the cars were pretty good on all that stuff. I pointed out a few things, and the guys were real happy to run back to their pit and try to correct it. I only had one guy that had to fabricate a drive shaft loop before I'd let him run, and I was cool with that. So things were pretty good, really.
Okay.
On your battery relocation, if you're going to put it in the trunk, you need a bulkhead between the trunk and the back seat. Aluminum, sheet metal, hell, wood. I don't care. Put if it's fit tight, put a piece of plywood back there, because you don't want anything out of that battery coming on you when you get it upside down.
If you get upside down.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's always if, but yeah.
Yeah. But I guess I was talking about the things that we already know. People have already asked the questions about Snell helmets and DOT helmets. Why we don't allow DOT helmets? Well, no, that's not entirely true. So we've had a brain trust discussion here, and we've determined that essentially the cutoff for the DOT helmets is going to be 765 in the 8th mile and slower. Right? You can run a DOT helmet. That helmet has been tested for those speeds on a motorcycle.
For those who don't know, because there will be people who don't know, a DOT is like a motorcycle type half shell, and it says DOT on it. This is that type of helmet.
Give me a second here. Somebody's calling the office here.
Called to ask him a tech question.
Yeah.
Yes, but that's a DOT. So if we go 764 or quicker, we need to have a Snell helmet.
Snell 2015. The Snell 2010, Snell 2005 they've all expired.
Okay, Sam Mountain Ballistics asked a question that connects to that. And he says, I'm running a street car. Asks, does he need a helmet if he's running a street car?
I think insurance-wise, just smart-wise, every car that runs down the track needs a helmet on the driver. That's my personal opinion.
Should.
Yes. And describe street car.
And the 765 number, what that jibes with pretty close is about the fastest. So your trap speed is going to be pretty close to the fastest highway speed limit in America right now. The fastest highway speed limit in America is 85 miles an hour in parts of rural Montana. Okay, 85. And so that's 765 in the 8th is pretty close to that. And so that's about what that helmet is made for, your fastest highway speeds and impact and so forth. That's kind of where that comes from.
And they're not hateful. Yeah, they're a little expensive. Helmets are a little bit expensive. I understand that. But so are intake manifolds. And so, there's a lot of other things on the car that are expensive that some of the guys didn't need. And I can tell you a head injury could be debilitating. It's not worth $150 to, get your bell rung and maybe never walk again, or, even worse.
Yeah. What's it worth to be, a vegetable versus
exactly
having a life? I mean, seriously. So real quick, Brian from Dust Devil Garage asks, is there a place online to get the AHRA rulebook? The answer is yes. You can go to ahraonline.com and you can get the rulebook there. And this is a question that I know came up last year because Stephen Holtz, please do talk about lug nuts and stud length. And does time play into it?
Oh. Open. We prefer open lug nuts so we can see the engagement. When you get into longer than normal studs, is like when you get into your aftermarket axles. You follow me? So.
Okay, but the question though, so the biggest thing I see, and Deke, correct me if I'm wrong, the biggest problem I see with having the right amount of engagement of the lug nut on the stud is when people go to aluminum wheels.
And they put the aftermarket nuts. Yep.
Well, the center of the wheel is an inch thick. Where
exactly.
Your steel wheel might have been a quarter. And so now you no longer have enough engagement on the lug nut in the stud.
Exactly.
That's the common problem.
And that's why I like to see the open ones, so you can actually see how much engagement you do have.
And what is the rule on how far the thread must be into the lug nut itself?
1.5 times the diameter of the stud.
Okay, so the thing
if it's a 1/2 inch stud, you need 3/4 engagement.
Okay, is that into it from the very bottom of the nut, or is that into the hex portion above the seat?
Total engagement from the beginning.
Okay.
From the beginning, yes.
Okay, so that's the common place where people get into that, is when they have an aluminum wheel that has a much thicker center and they have stock length studs. That's usually what causes that.
Exactly. That's where they get into it.
And Buff just put up the link to the AHRA rulebook. Thank you. I'm going to skip ahead a little bit. I'll scan for a few. Let's see here. And if you ask a question and we don't catch it, feel free to ask again. Just don't post on full auto. We're trying to get it because there's a lot of great questions in here, and I really appreciate that. And this is a very important point that Rick J. brings up here. Remember, you and your car may be fine, but if the other guy crosses the line and hits you, you have no control over that. Very much so.
Very much so.
And I have seen that many, many times.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, I agree with Buck. I'd rather have a helmet and not need it than, it's like seatbelt. I put a seatbelt on every single day. It's not because I'm like, man, I'm glad I had that wreck. Otherwise, I'd have put my seatbelt on for nothing.
Absolutely, yeah.
Said no one.
Yeah, said no one.
All right, let's scan ahead and just see. Well, yeah, common lug nuts. So, Deke, you said that you prefer open because it makes it very easy to inspect.
Correct.
Would you disallow a closed lug nut? Or would you say want them to take one off and show you? What would you do for a car that comes through with a closed-in lug nut?
I can look at the lug nut and tell if you try to put a tapered lug nut, like on a unilug wheel, you're able to see that. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
If you look real close, you can see where it actually buries itself down into the rim. So you know you're getting engagement there. I've never had anybody actually take one off to show me, but that's not off the table.
Well, do remember, guys, Deke has the right to want you guys to take stuff apart or tear down as needed, if need be, if it's needed.
And if you're coming in there with something stock, I want the hubcaps off.
Okay, that's a good point.
And a number one thing to make sure you've got a lug nut on every stud.
All right. Scanning ahead. Sorry, guys, because when I hold it, that's we get a little behind. I'm going to take this one, just put it up there. For those of you who do race NHRA or AHRA, may have seen some differences in the rules. So, Deke, I'll let you take that one. Are there any differences right off that you would like to discuss between the sanctioning bodies? Some things people might need to be aware of if perhaps they have followed another sanctioning body's rule book.
For the most part, probably 99% or better of the rules are across all three sanctioning bodies. And you got to remember, guys, all these rules were written in blood. These rules were written because somebody got killed by not doing one of these things.
Yep.
And but no, that the rules follow each other very close between the sanctioning bodies. I can't think of anything that's a huge difference.
There are little differences, but
they're minute.
Radical.
Right. And we accept if you've got a chassis sticker on your chassis, it needs to be up to date, no matter whose it is, AHRA, IHRA, or NHRA. But it needs to be up to date, and the AHRA will accept the other two sanctioning bodies' stickers for chassis inspection.
I'm going to pick up something here Chucky's saying. By the way, if you haven't seen what Chucky's got that he wants to bring, which is this wild-looking Overlander Buick, it's cool. I like it. But Chucky's got some things that need to happen, really, for that car to pass tech. We really don't want anybody getting hurt. And sometimes these janky coat hanger welded things like that might make good content. They're fun on videos, but they may not be safe for your car to go down the track next to somebody else. So just remember that. These rules are not just for you. They're for the other car too, and the spectators, anybody else around. So there's things, if you got a car that has some of that kind of stuff going on, it would really be a good idea to get up on the wheel early, and let's make sure the car can pass tech. Okay, and Chucky's is one of those. It's a cool creation. I want to see it there. We had all kinds of crazy stuff going down that track last year. I think it's wonderful. I love to see different stuff that you've never seen on a racetrack. We just want to make sure that it's safe the best we reasonably can.
Right. Because it's not just you can hurt. It's the guy in the other lane.
Or a spectator, or a track member.
Exactly.
Yes.
Or even worse, me. Huh.
All right. So here's a question from Randall. What if there's no trunk pan? Nothing lighter than something that's not there. What about trunk pans?
Yeah, I don't see any problem with no trunk pan.
Okay.
But you need a framework. You need a framework across there to mount your cell to. You need a framework from the frame to mount your battery to.
Okay, and this is a question that's worth grabbing because it did come up last year. Pure Pontiac Garage asks, do all cars require a drive shaft loop?
Only the ones that have drag slicks or racing tires, which is like those they call them cheater slicks. Mm-hmm. They've got 2 grooves in them. Mm-hmm. That's a slick.
All right. What if the car runs a regular street tire, but it runs a certain ET? At what ET do you need to see a drive shaft loop?
I think that's around 1150 to 1399 quarter mile. You would need okay, pardon me. Let me reiterate that. 1149 and quicker, you do need one.
In the quarter.
Right. I don't have my conversion here.
Or if you have slicks or drag radials at any ET.
At any ET, absolutely.
And just because last year I saw 1 or 2 that were put in the wrong place, explain to them where this loop needs to be on the car.
It needs to be within 6 inches behind the front U-joint. If you're running a truck with a 2-piece, that's where it needs to be. If you're running anything else with a 1-piece, that's where it needs to be. If you break that front yoke or front joint, and especially at speed, that drive shaft will drop into that loop and it'll make a hell of a noise. But if you don't have the loop and that thing catches in a crack, it'll pole vault the car. I've seen them turned clear upside down because they pole vault. And it's not a pleasant sight.
You know, last year, nobody got hurt. We didn't need so much as a Band-Aid. I can't tell you, that's the best safety record you could ever have. It's called perfect.
Oh, yeah, so that's exactly right.
We can do that again this year. Now, remember, we're going to be probably scaled up a little bit. We'll probably have more people participating, more people racing. So, again, if we want to strive for that perfect safety record, which we would love to have again, it's just going to take everybody's effort. It's just going to take all of us.
Well, I've got my notebook here. There were 62 cars, 62 vehicles last year. That's how many I teched. And then on the monkey bikes, I think there was, I can't remember. It was not a lot, believe it or not.
Okay, so passing tech on the monkey bike, that would be a good one to mention.
We had 5 monkey bikes that went through tech. 6 should have, but 5 did.
So, in other words, monkey bike, everybody had a number for their monkey bike. They had a car number. And
yes.
Everybody will have to have a car number again. And every monkey bike will have to have a car number again. And you will have to go through tech. And we're going to streamline the tech process this year a little bit too. So tech will be open on Thursday so that people will have more opportunity to get teched in. We're going to make that a little easier.
The monkey bikes, they got to weigh a minimum of 230 pounds, if I remember correctly. Is that right, John?
Yep. And the monkey bike rules, we may make some tweaks to them. The monkey bike rules will be posted on the registration site soon. No radical changes, but there are a few little things that are clarifying a few things like that. So once we get those things sewn up here in the next couple of days, they'll be up on the registration site. No radical changes from last year.
Right.
230 with driver.
Yep.
And
230 with monkey.
Yeah, right. All right. Does anybody else have any questions? Because I've got one for Dallas that I've been saving from another. These are all technical questions on the cars.
And one thing that doesn't get mentioned enough, if you're flying down through there and things are going great, remember Murphy's Law. Suddenly things can go bad. If you feel for example, a wrist pin go through the pan, or let's say a high drum explodes in your torque flight or whatever, pull off to the side. Get out of the middle of the track. Get clear over to the guardrail and get stopped as quickly and safely as you can to contain the lubricant leaking out of your vehicle. Because it takes a long time to clean up a mess. And if it's right down the track, right down the traction part of the track, it just makes it that much tougher. It's more expensive and more time consuming to clean up.
Here's one I need to grab Andrew Nelson. Andrew Nelson, we are going to have a little bit more manpower teching. However, I don't think it's right if we have any of the participants teching the cars. That's why Dallas and I don't get into that either. But we'll have more manpower and we'll be open earlier. So we're good right there. What was the other question I wanted to grab here? Kill switch on the monkey bike, the dead man switch. That'd be a good one to take right there. Or on a car, either way.
Well, it's really not required on a car unless you transfer the battery to the trunk. And if you do that, if you do move your battery to the trunk, the master kill switch needs to be accessible from outside the trunk. That way, if something happens to you in the car, the tech and safety people get to you, the first thing they're going to do is kill that battery, because you don't know the wires aren't shorted and it's trying to melt something, cause for fire or what have you. And yes, the monkey bikes have to have a kill switch.
Frankenstein C20 is here a little bit late. Helmet requirements. One thing I'll say that's an easy distilled thing. We talked about helmets earlier. All cars going down the track must have a helmet. Everyone in every car going down the track must have a helmet. If you are 765 ET in the 8th mile or slower, you may use a DOT helmet. You can use a Snell, but you can get away with a DOT helmet, and that will pass tech this year if your ET is 765 in the 8th mile or slower. If your ET is 764 or quicker, you must have a Snell 2015.
Correct. And for the guys that don't know, trust me, if your car runs 764 and quicker, you know it. You've driven the car enough, you know what it runs.
Usually people with cars that quick know. All right. skim ahead. Okay, here's an interesting one. I don't know if we'll have it, but this could be interesting. What about a convertible top? The actual material of the convertible top. I don't think I've ever had anybody ask that one. That's a good question. That's an interesting one. So Danny Boyd's specific question is tears in the convertible top.
Duct tape it. I mean, really.
Fair enough.
I mean, if you get that car upside down and you don't have a cage in it or a roll bar, it's not going to care whether it's got a little rip in it or not. I mean, obviously, we don't want anything flapping loose enough it would flap as you go down the track. But yeah, just duct tape over it. That's not going to affect your safety. That's my personal opinion.
Okay, here's an interesting comment from Track and Travel with Rick. And by the way, Track and Travel with Rick is Rick Geray, Father Ricky Geray. You guys are familiar with Geray Racing and the Green Duster. So if you see that, you make sure you know who that is.
Oh, I know who that is.
Yep. Rick says kill switch needs to kill engine, got to run the alternator back through it.
That's correct.
I think what he's talking about is to make sure that you actually kill your ignition if the alternator doesn't keep the car running without.
Exactly.
So if you put it on the wrong side, it would do that.
They make kill switches that have an extra set of lugs for the alternator wire.
Okay, and this is an important question here. Dennis has about the convertible. I'm assuming that's what he's talking about. The convertible. Does it have? Okay, I'll phrase this the most universal way. How different is it if you have a convertible with regards to a cage or roll bar? What are bar and cage requirements for convertibles if they differ from hardtop cars? That's probably
okay.
Just heard a truck tire blow on the interstate right out here.
Be a good time to have a tire repair shop.
Yeah, I could hear that tire slapping it going all the way down the highway.
Let me find my
all right, can you guys hear me?
Sure
yes.
can, Dallas. We're just catching some universal questions like your cage and bar requirements for a convertible. We talked about lug nuts. How they need to protrude into the hex. We talked about battery shutoffs for cars with relocated batteries and just some general things. Yep. And so right now we're talking about any cage and bar requirements for convertibles and how they may differ from hardtop cars, because we never know what's going to show up at this event.
Right. Or you just have no top car, because that has a possibility of being there too.
You have no idea. That's one thing about this event. Is we truly have more diversity on the track than anything. So we got to be ready for anything.
Well, Pure Pontiac Garage is asking, there are seat belts required on all cars. Yes.
And we reiterated the helmet rules because we got into them earlier. But for those of you who are just getting here, because it's the most commonly asked question, if your car, every car going down the track must have a helmet. If your car runs 765 in the eighth or slower, you can get away with a DOT helmet. That's okay. You could also run a Snell, but you don't have to. Snell's more expensive. You can get away with a DOT. But if your car is 764 or quicker in the eighth mile, you must have a Snell 2015.
So I'm not finding that in the rule book here.
Oh, which one?
On the convertible?
Oh, normally there is 2 sets of times specifically for the convertible. I think it's 13 flat is where the convertible requires the roll cage, right?
Roll bar.
Roll bar. Okay, roll bar. Yeah.
So I think it is $12.99 in a quarter. So
right, which would be, I don't know what, I think that's 860.
Yeah, that's pretty close. Yeah.
I get my conversion somewhere around there.
Okay, so I'm making notes of a couple things so I can get back to them for you guys. So, Deke, here's something I'd like to do with Chucky. If you're okay with this, I think it'd make a great case study for this event for AHRA Tech. I want to send Deke the video of your car. Let Deke take a look at the video of your car and make any notes on what, just from the video, of course, it's not necessarily all inclusive, but just from the video, what might need to be done to pass tech. I think that will be helpful to a lot of people.
And which car is that, John?
Chucky has this Buick that he's made some kind of lifted overlander out of with a homemade lift. And that car it's probably going to have a lot of interesting things that if we study it could help other people who are putting together unique rides. Because I'd love to see that car going down the track, and I just want to make sure that he can do that. But I think that some of the stuff he's done will help other people too. So I want to send you that video, Deke, and then we can follow up with that.
Sure.
Did you see the super chat there from Bear Rose?
I did not. I haven't gotten to it yet. I'm a little behind because I was trying to hold a couple of questions while we were on them. So there we go. Bear Rose, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Doing a traditional gasser style build, what will be required to run the manual transmission? I'm not sure exactly what you're asking there, ma'am.
Well, so manual transmission requires generally a scatter shield, SFI scatter shield, right?
Right.
A blow-proof bell housing, and then I want to say if they're required to run the blow-proof bell housing, they got to have a SFI approved flywheel.
Correct.
38 POS Racing, no, it's 765 and slower. 764 and quicker requires Snell 2015 or newer.
Oh, he's wanting to know, can you use an older Snell at 764 and slower, or 765 and slower?
That's a great question.
No, I'm sticking to my guns on the Snell 2015.
Yeah, so those, if you didn't know, those numbers are based on essentially the lifespan of the helmet, right? So they give them about a 10-year lifespan, and that foam breaks down inside the helmet.
Correct.
Is the standing that they have for those. And the only reason that's different than a DOT, like your DOT, you can keep for freaking 20 years. But the DOT helmet is not fire resistant.
Right.
That Snell helmet is.
So if you have a car that runs as quick as Redbeard's, do we need to update our belts that are 12 years old? Yes. Yes.
I believe Redbeard, did he run the slowest car there last year, I think? Almost timed out the timers.
Yeah. Pure Pontiac Garage. So do all manual transmissions need the blow-proof bell housing?
No.
No, there's a certain ET where it's required.
And what ET must he get a blow-proof bell housing?
I believe that and I'm going by my quarter mile numbers here. 1149 and quicker.
So that's a 730 and the 8th.
Right.
Okay, Mr. Polo has a question that's relevant, I think, if we get into it a little bit. Will he need to modify his car at all if it's bone stock? He has a bone stock C4 Corvette. So theoretically, it should already have overflow bottle. It's the right capacity. It should already have battery hold down and all of that.
Absolutely.
Should he need to do anything to it if it's bone stock?
If it's factory stock and everything is functional,
in good condition, yeah. Your battery hold down and all that.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to do very, very little to it. I mean, if anything, it'd be drain the antifreeze out, and that'd be about it. So, and the only reason you do the antifreeze thing is, okay, you guys remember last year when Stephen Myrick's candy cane let loose all her candy goodness. It only took about an hour and a half to clean it up. Had that been a bunch of antifreeze, we would have been out there for 4 hours cleaning that up.
We would have lost half a day of racing. And more importantly, we could have had a bigger wreck.
And like I mentioned while you were off there, Dallas, it's really important when the whole world goes to hell is get that thing to the side of the track and get it stopped as quick as you can.
Yeah,
to get it out.
Yeah,
it's just easier to clean up a puddle, and push it off to the side than to try to clean up the actual traction surface. It just is.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
So Jason Falk has a good question on factory lap belts, and I see a lot of derivatives of this. How quick? Okay, what should people know about running factory lap belts in regards to condition, how quick the car can be, placement, etc.? What would you tell people about factory belts?
Well, you can actually run a factory belt, I think, to 10 flat, right, Dallas?
Yeah, 10 flat. You're good till 10 flat, and then the big one is like I said before, it could be 50 years old as long as it's in good condition.
I got one question here from Travis I think is really good because we're going to have a lot of trucks here this year. And then I got one from JB. Travis is asking, on a truck, does the roll bar have to be in the cab or can it be in the bed?
I think it has to be in the cab. Because if you put it in the bed, it puts it too far behind your head.
That's true. It has to be in the cab. And
it's
that's
got to be within 6 inches of your head. And there's no way you could do that with a straight roll bar. Yeah, you could bend some whoopties in it and push it, bring it forward towards the cab. But
that defeats the purpose of the roll bar functionality.
A roll bar with anything other than the normal 2 bends, the main hoop, if it's got more than those 2 bends in it, it's not a roll bar anymore. It's ballast because it's going to fold.
Yeah, do remember too, when you've seen really big in the 80s, we're having light bars. And they looked like roll bars, and they were chrome, and they were in the bed, and they were right behind the cab. But they weren't roll bars; they were light bars.
They were light bars, and they were made out of exhaust tubing.
They were really thin. I mean, you could smash that like nothing, wasn't even there. So JB has a question, and we'll go ahead and grab here. His question is important. I was reading as it went by. I just want to make sure I wrap my head around it before I read it, because a lot of people listen to this later instead of watching live. Let's say that you have a car that you expect to run 8s, you've built it to run 8s, and then the car gets into the 7s, and let's say now we're past the break of certain ETs. Do you just keep it slow, or can you not run it? In other words, can you run a car slower to meet the safety requirements than what it will run? I don't know why not. People do that all the time.
Put a throttle stop on it.
Yeah.
Generally, tracks give you a break for stuff like this, because when you show up and you say, hey, I think it's going to run an 8 flat, and let's say it runs a 770. Okay. You got good air, track is cooking good. You've been working on it all weekend. Next thing you know, it's down into the 740 zone. Okay. Now you've crossed the line for like a 750. You generally get a grace period on that stuff, and we'll say, hey, look, after this event's over, next no-name nationals, if you got the same stuff on here and we already know what to run a 740, it's going to be a no bueno.
Right.
So here's the deal. We don't want to keep anybody from being able to race. We're not really important to note. Neither we nor any of you guys do we want to be weaponizing the tech inspection process. Okay. So we are not using the tech inspection process to keep people from running, just like we're not going to allow participants to use the tech inspection process to try to beat on fellow participants. Okay. We won't do that either way. But the big thing is think about this in a really common sense way. You bring a car that runs a 590 in the gate and you tell us this thing will run an 810. What do you think?
We know that you know better.
We know that you know better. So don't insult our intelligence, okay? We saw some stuff.
And even if you slip me a double sawbuck, I'm still going to know.
We saw some. We've seen some quick cars before that we know need cages, right? And if you need one, you need one. If you had the money and the skill and the time to build a car that'll run a 550, then you should have the money, the skill, and the time to put a cage in it.
Yeah, there's nothing more important than your life. I mean, okay, you go fast, and think about this. It's not just you. Let's say
Yes.
you slide in there and you got your no roll bar 550 car, and you rip that sucker off, and we keep the lights off, and everything's totally kosher because it's plausible deniability that the car didn't run a 550. But your car, let's say it gets out of shape and careens into the other lane and kills the guy in the other lane, right? How do you think that is going to go for anybody, right? Because next thing you know, there's going to be, let's say the other person in the other lane, their significant other decides to file a lawsuit against you, against us, against the AHRA, against the no-name nationals. Right?
You've got that hanging on you forever. You've got your injuries forever. You got the economic impact forever. Gosh, the least thing on the list is look what it's done to the event. I mean, so you got all kinds of problems bigger than that too. And you've torn up your car and somebody else's car and the bad press. There's just nothing good about it. Nothing good about that when we're just talking about doing some things to keep everybody safe. And I was telling Deke earlier, last year we had a stellar safety record. Stellar.
Absolutely.
Nobody even needed a Band-Aid last year. Nobody got hurt. Nothing happened. No one wrecked.
I had blisters on my hands, John. I had Band-Aids on.
Dallas got some blisters driving in fence posts to put the sign up, and that's about it. You know, we had a couple broken tail shaft, broken drive shaft, and a broken connecting rod, but nobody got hurt. We really want to see that.
Yeah, and nobody even got hurt after Dizzy Izzy went out for a burnout contest. That, that's surprising. That's saying something right there.
Absolutely.
So we can't do better than our safety record last year, but we sure want to tie it.
Bear Rose Garage is asking, are burnout only entries subject to the same tech requirements?
Okay, so I'll tell you what, I'll paint the scenario for that before Dallas gets it. See, okay, let's say you got a car that'll run quicker than a Snell helmet, but you're in the burnout contest. So we know you're not going to get how fast with that. Would a DOT helmet be okay there?
Yes.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. What about
because your terminal speed is not going to be anything like on the track.
Okay. What about a car that let's say they take it off the trailer, it goes way too quick, it needs a cage. Could they still run the car in the burnout competition even though they could not run that ET on the track now?
For sure.
Sure.
Okay. I'm just trying to set those up because that's where I think those questions are aimed at.
And I mean, we're not focused, just like it was last year. We're not focused on kicking people out. We want you to run.
Yes.
We want you to come there and have fun. That was the whole point of putting on this event. You think it'd be, fun for us to throw you out? That's not going to go well for the event.
The last thing we want to do is see anybody work so hard on a car and trailer 1,000 miles and get there and have a reason they can't run. That we would hate that for you.
Exactly.
We don't want that at all.
And that's why you see us doing, hey, this is what the tech stuff is on the second live after the announcement of the video.
Exactly.
Or of the event. And so that way, you have your tech stuff ironed out beforehand. It isn't something that we're doing this live, a week before. We're like, oh, crap. I got to put PVC pipe.
You have 251 days to get this right. I'm sure you can do it. That's why we're doing it now.
And that guy was asking about building an 8 flat car, and then next thing you know, it's running 730s.
Right.
Well, I can tell you from experience, that's not how it goes. You guys can too. You build it to run 7 flat, and then the fastest you can get it to go is 8.
That's
it's the American way, right?
Right.
That's Murphy's Law. It's Murphy's Law.
I do see some value though in exploring some of these what ifs because these people are spending a lot of time, a lot of money, traveling from a lot of distance, taking time off, and we want to try to get way ahead of this so that everybody's going to have their stuff in order to get out on the track and race and have a good and safe time. So that's why.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Also, we're I don't know if you guys addressed this at all, but we're going to open up tech on Thursday. You guys addressed that?
Yes.
Yeah, we discussed that.
Thursday.
Okay. All right. So, and it's not just Thursday. I mean, you can literally do it Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday if you want. Or, well, if you do it on Sunday, you're going to miss the event. But yeah, you can do it, Thursday, Friday, Saturday while we're there. No problem. The reason why we did that is just to alleviate the bottleneck of tech right when the lane's open, essentially.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Administratively, we're going to make it run smoother this year than last year because that's just what we want to do. So we're going to do that. But as far as we're going to do that on our end, we're trying to help you guys on your end by telling you exactly what you need to do, what the expectations are to pass tech on the first try. And that's what we're looking for.
And as far as I know, there's not going to be a live track on Thursday, correct?
Correct.
Yes, that's correct.
Redbeard is asking, Venom's cage is not certified. Does it have to be certified to run? I've never had a certified. So for those of you that aren't quite sure, Venom is his demon, and I'm thinking that demon runs around a 550.
It's fast.
It needs to be certified.
I didn't see any numbers on it, but it was fast. So here's the interesting thing, Redbeard. If you can't get it certified before you get to the event, Deke actually has the equipment and the ability to certify that chassis. So, and I think I owe you some stickers, don't I, Deke?
Yeah. You never did send me any.
Going from memory, I'm thinking what I've seen of that cage, that is a good quality cage. I mean, it's not like
it's pretty decent.
Yeah, that car is a legit chassis and everything. But yeah, we'll work with you ahead of time to make sure you're good. Okay.
And that car needed belts too.
Okay. This is a question I get a lot of. There's two questions, and I'm going to put them right together. And Dumopar's asking one of them. What's the ruling on passengers going down the track? And how old do you have to be to drive down the track or ride down the track?
I would put the passenger upon the event director.
Okay.
So the way I look at this is we had a lot of questions about this last year. So we encourage people to do it. But here's the caveat. If you're going to take a passenger down, if your car runs like, say, 970 in the 8th mile, they have to have the same safety equipment on that you do, the exact same safety equipment as the driver. So if that's a helmet and just a seatbelt, so be it. It's a helmet and a seatbelt, right? But generally, when you're looking at going down the track, it isn't just helmet, seatbelt. You want to have long pants on, shoes, because think about yourself in the worst case situation. Worst case situation, you get out 100 feet and you careen right into the wall because you get into some water or something, right? Well, when the floor folds up and it's spilling transmission fluid out because it broke the transmission and the bell housing all over into the floor of the car, you aren't taking 200-degree stuff right on the skin, right? Or the feet, or got your toes cut off, or that's the whole purpose of that stuff. It isn't to be, anal about how it needs to be when you're running, but the reality of it is you got to look at it from the perspective of you getting hurt, right? Yeah, 99.99% of the time they're going to go down there just fine. Everything will be peachy keen. It's just that 0.0001% where bad things could happen, right? And you can make it worse. Now, so I was going to get on to, if you have like a full-blown race car, okay, and you're going to take a rider with you, we're going to stop doing riders about, we'll just say the 8th mile ET about 640, okay? If you, and the reason I say that is because now it becomes a completely different ball game, right? When you start running 639 and faster is where the car is set up generally just for you. You put another passenger in there, that's 200 pounds of ballast in a different spot that you don't normally have. You don't know how the car is going to react, stuff like that. But if you're slower than that and you still want to take your passenger along, you still have to have the same safety requirements. So if you had to have a roll bar like a minimum of a 4-point. You had to have a neck brace and a full face helmet. That's what your passengers got to have.
I agree.
It's that simple. Yeah.
Excellent. I like that.
and with a going along with NHRA's rules, you must have a state issued driver's license in good standing to take a car down the track.
Right. Yeah, that's generally 16.
Now,
and
question.
I agree. I tend to agree with that one.
Question. You said, and I'm not saying this, to be aggravating. I'm saying it in all honesty. We have Canadians, we have Australians, we may have New Zealanders, we may have people from Mexico. We do accept their licenses too, do we not?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we give reciprocity for international driving licenses too. Okay.
Yeah. Nobody else abides by ours at the AHRA, but we're generous enough to abide by the other rules.
Danny Boyd is asking an important question. I think what we do is he says no sleeveless shirts is a question. What I would turn around and say, what are the requirements for basic clothing and how do they change? At what point? So first of all, what should people wear going down the track? Are there any restrictions on clothing? And at what point do we have to have fire jacket, pants, that kind of thing? So start with like your street car. My
quick chart here is 1149 and quicker. You should have a single layer jacket.
Okay. All right.
So
are there any restrictions on cars slower than that?
No.
Okay. So can you wear flip-flops and swim trunks and sleeveless shirt if you're going, say, in the 8th mile?
I've seen a lot of guys do it.
Okay.
I don't.
All right. Also, here's another one we had from
I've seen a kid in a super comp dragster with shorts and a damn wife beater.
Yeah,
and then when he won the event and he was 14 years old in super comp in a rail. I'm like, well, that's a little bit above and beyond. But
question: what about the driver's window? Must the driver's window be up to go down the track?
Sure, prefer it.
Okay.
We like the windows up if it's got windows.
Yeah.
If it's got windows, okay.
Yeah. So
the bullet hole Pontiac, of course. Well, that's something different.
Well, okay. So the whole reasoning behind that, to be honest with you, you got to think of it this from the accident perspective on all these rules. If a car rolls over, it has it and it doesn't break the window. It keeps you contained inside the car, and you can't come out and get squished, right? Arm rolled over and pinched off, or anything
exactly.
Like that.
Exactly.
You know what? I'll put it like this. I used to know a trainer in firearms world. He said, I've never seen anybody who got in a gunfight who carried less ammo after. And I've never seen anybody get in a serious wreck that decided they wanted less safety equipment after. I mean,
that's exactly right.
This is the reality of it.
That's fact.
I've never seen anybody get in a rollover and say, hey, I want to wear less helmet from now on. Never. I've never once seen that.
Well, and here's the sad part is that most of these rules are written in blood, right? Like there's literally most of them are written in blood. Someone had to get killed or hurt or maimed pretty bad for this to become a rule. And it's not just me making the rules up. These are all coming from the standard, which is SFI, the Safety Foundation for motorsports, right? People have already been there, done that, and got the T-shirt and maybe got the casket. Why try to reinvent it?
Exactly.
So this is interesting. Chucky says, he says, a bad wreck is how I got my nickname, 500 stitches to the face. So he looks like Chucky from the Scary Movie. Wow.
Huh.
Tell you what, we don't want that.
No, we don't want none of that.
Danny Boyd is saying open face helmet was good enough for Dale, was good enough for me. Yeah, Dale Earnhardt will be alive if he wasn't wearing an open face helmet that day.
Actually, wasn't that the Hans? That was the Hans, right?
It was
Well, but
that's
yeah, but that's the thing was an open face helmet. He took a lick right to the steering wheel with the jaw, I think. But bottom line is, we just
but
wanted to
also
say,
on his cool down lap, he was the guy that loosened his belts.
Andrew Nelson says, I've been in 2 fires. You can't wish the safety equipment on when the blaze is roaring. That's right. If you don't have it when you leave the line, you will not have it anywhere else.
That's
You will
fact.
not have time to put it on. Okay, and Travis must be planning on bringing something quick. At what ET does the roll bar or cage come into effect? If we were not clear enough, at what ET does
You're
the
not
roll bar or
required.
cage?
You're not required to roll cage until it's
No,
6:39. 6:39
right.
fast, right?
Right.
But roll bar starts to come into effect at 11:50. I think
Right.
is the number.
11:49 and quicker. Yep.
JB's like me. He's wear your seatbelt kind of guy. I mean, I am too. I didn't wear a seatbelt till I was almost 16. When I went to driver's ed, they said, "Hey, you have to wear a seatbelt." But that wasn't a thing back then. Like most people did not wear seatbelts when I was a kid, and that's changed, and I'm glad.
Well, I'm old. When I was a kid, most cars didn't have seat belts.
Yeah, I guess it's all relative, isn't it?
Yeah, I used to lay up in the package tray. My parents had like a 62 Impala 4-door, and I used to lay up in the package tray in that thing.
Absolutely. My dad, we'd go on long trips. That's where I'd sleep. There wasn't no such thing as a child seat in those days.
Does anybody else have any tech-specific questions? I got to tell you, I appreciate the turnout tonight. And Track and Travel, Rick here, he puts up this 735 is the 8th for a bar. Would be like a 4-point bar. That's what
Right.
Rick is saying.
Yeah.
Okay. I got to say, last year, it seemed like most people had speed-appropriate equipment. I mean, like the Nelsons and Redbeard had really quick cars, but they also had cages. They also had belts. So it seems like you guys are pretty well on top of things. We're just trying to do what we can to help everybody have their stuff in order when they get there.
But if you're going to eclipse a 6, you need a cage, certified, and up-to-date belts for sure.
Stephen Holtz asks a great question. Fire extinguishers. I'll let y'all tell us about fire extinguishers.
I don't think there's any class that's going to show up there where it would be required. If you want to have one in there, it's a great idea.
Yeah, if you don't have one in there, you can't use it.
I have a 2-pounder that I carry, in the console, a fire extinguisher all the time. And it's not a bad idea to have one. And I'll tell you, I would recommend all of you guys have a real fire extinguisher in your pit.
I'll
like
tell you what I've seen.
10-pounder, a good
I've
one.
seen a car burned to the ground in the pits because no one around them even had a fire extinguisher in the trailer.
Right.
I always keep one in the trailer.
Actually, I know one worse. I know a guy that so a friend of mine used to work with a mechanic at a Ford garage, and he was trying to test fuel pressure on his Bronco. And for whatever reason, he just had handy a number 2 pencil, and he stuck it in the Schrader valve on the fuel rail to see if it was getting fuel pressure, and broke the pencil with the switch on. And gas was just blasting out all over this hot engine, and it caught fire.
Oh, no.
And it just burned and burned and burned, and there was nothing he could do but watch that thing burn to the ground. So it's fire extinguisher can keep you from a lot of heartbreak, but at least it'd be a good idea to have one in your pits.
Yeah. Stephen Holtz is asking here. I don't know if you saw that one. I'm gonna be way behind. I'm at 750. He says, "What about junior racers, aka 13 to 15-year-olds?"
Yes, minimum age to go down the track. Stephen, we've addressed that. To go to drive down the track, you have to have a driver's license.
Because we're not running a junior program at the No Name.
Yeah,
right?
Okay. I'll let you know. Like Deke seen this. I raced when I had just the what is that thing called? That slip that you get.
Learner's permit.
The learner's permit. Yeah, I raced the high school class at my local track with my learner's permit. I had to have a consenting parent sign the parent's waiver for me to do that. But this was way before junior dragsters. This is when high school was all you had.
Yeah. High school was in its infancy then.
Yeah.
So bear in mind, there's going to be things that we may adjust over time, just like we have from last year until now. But we're trying to get one good comprehensive place together on this live for all of these major tech questions that all of you guys ask in one place to refer to. So I hope this is helping. Does anybody else have any specific questions?
Because we don't want anybody to be bum rushed in tech.
No, we don't want them to get there and not be able to run.
I'll tell you,
like the one guy that that did not have a drive shaft loop and needed one, and I'm not going to name who he is, but he looked at me and he said, "Well, Dallas didn't tell me I had to have one." Okay.
Well,
I didn't know how to answer him.
Maybe he didn't ask Dallas if he needed one. You know what? I guarantee you, I didn't tell him he didn't need one because I wasn't asked.
Right.
I don't even remember it. What's funny is you should have told him. Well, I'm telling you, you need one.
and I did, and he went and fabricated one up, and I let him go. So
yeah, put street tires on it, buddy, and then done.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Oh man, first responder garage here is saying they had to cut a guy out of a truck head-on collision just 3 days ago. 120 miles an hour plus hit. Roll cages will save your limbs and your life. If you're any kind of fast above stock, I suggest more than just a loop.
Yeah. So Mopar Jeff says he recommends going to a track. Yeah, you know what? It's not a bad idea at all to take your stuff to a track and at least get some laps in. Try to pass tech at a track, and that'll help you. It'll help you if coming to the No Name Nationals is not the first time you've ever tried to pass techs. But if it is, it is, and that's fine. We welcome you. But yeah,
a $25 test and tune could take a lot of questions out of the equation.
Sure could. And Big Block 402, Stephen here's asking, what is the distance for the loop? I'm assuming you mean the drive shaft loop. So for those who missed it.
Within 6 inches behind the front U-joint. The loop needs to be a 1/4 inch thick, 2 inch wide.
And Kenny Wooden here says he puts the big statement that should go along with Deke's statement here, I guess, is if a car has slicks, it needs a drive shaft loop. If you don't have slicks, does drag radials fall in there too, Deke? I think if they have drag radials, I got to have drive shaft loop too, right?
I believe so. Let me look that up.
But yeah, so generally, if it's a DOT approved tire, you don't have to have one. If it's a racing purpose tire like a slick or like a drag radial, I believe it has to have a drive shaft loop.
Andrew Nelson is saying drag radials too. I believe he is right.
Yep.
A Cove asks a question. What ET is a fuel cell required?
Oh.
That's an interesting one.
Actually, I don't think you're required to have a fuel cell at any AT.
No.
It just has to have a fuel tank.
You can run a stock tank to any ET if you want.
Yeah, I think the only place that starts to become a problem is when when you're taking off and the fuel starts to come out the back. Right. And then you start looking at a non-vented cap.
Right.
Whitetail Rancher, cheater slicks. Yes, cheater slicks. Drag radials require drive shaft loops. Cheater slicks for our purposes are slicks for the purpose of a drive shaft loop.
But some of those drag radials and cheater slicks, they don't have a soft sidewall like a slick is. They hit harder off the line than a slick does if they hook.
So,
and they'll really break a U-joint.
Couple things real quick. Kenny Whitten, you can get the AHRA rule book for free at ahraonline.com. It's right there. You know what? Can one of our mods post that put that in the chat? AHRAonline.com is the rule book. You can put a link right to it in here, but you guys can get that later. I'll put a link below that down here for people watching this on replay.
And the new one should be out here really soon. I mean, I've just had to revise for the 2023 season.
Okay. Mopar Jeff 604 has a great question. At what ET or what equipment or whatnot are you required to have metal valve stems?
I would like to say on all the slick tire cars.
I don't think there's an ET required for that. Because on a slick, okay, the old school thing used to be run a tube, you know, and you could run a tube in there. And the only reason they went to a metal stem on a tube was it started tearing the tubes off, the stems off the tube.
Right.
I don't think they're required at any speed.
I found this on the drive line. One drive shaft loop required on all cars running drag racing purpose tires, slicks or drag radials, or $9.99 or quicker in the quarter. So if you're running that fast, if you're running 6:49 1/8 mile or quicker, even on street tires, you need a loop.
I can't even see somebody running that fast, but I guess your donk out there with the big 21 or 25-inch wheels
24s,
on it.
Yeah.
If it's running a 999, it needs to have a drive shaft loop.
Right.
And at that point, it's got to have 5-point harness. It's also got to have a roll cage.
Exactly.
And now your donk is probably running 1040 again.
Over 100 miles per hour, Andrew Nelson says. Is that 100 miles per hour? And in the eighth is a
yes. Oh no, not in the eighth, in the quarter. Or no, I'm sorry, in the eighth. In the eighth, that would be that's correct. In the eighth
is a 6 something.
Yeah, that's a 6. It's about a 640, 641, somewhere around there. Oh, it might be a little slower than that. 650 maybe.
Yeah.
Yep. Jeray's made a list. Barrows had a question I thought was Barrows had a question. Can he run if the frame rails of his car are lower than the sidewalls of the tires? That's
now,
interesting one.
There's no real rule against scrub line.
Wouldn't that high center of the car though? Maybe I'm not making any sense of this.
No, if it's lowered so low that the frame is lower than the rim.
Oh, okay. Then the center line of the rim, or actually the bottom of the wheel. Okay, I was thinking sidewall of the tire, like it would be on the ground.
Right, but it's your bad day trying to get a floor jack under it if you have a flat.
Yep. So Brainerd made Bigfoots and Mopars get steel valve stems. Had to replace the front rubber stems.
When did that happen? What did he say? What ET? Because I don't think I've ever seen anybody get kicked out for over valve stems. But I have seen rubber stuff on things running way fast in the 5s.
Right.
I did the steel valve stem because it's so much freaking easier.
Right.
It's almost like a no-brainer, especially when you got to change tires often. And guess what they do? They always cut the stem off, and they put a new one on. That doesn't mean that new one's going to work well.
Right.
That steel one works.
Here
Once you
go.
seal them, they're pretty good.
Scarlet the Four-Eyed Cuda is saying on page 124, metal screw-in valve stems are mandatory in tubeless front tires and rear of all tires, running $11.99 and quicker than a quarter.
Yeah, you can't buy a drag racing tube that doesn't have a steel stem on it anymore. I don't think there's even anything available. And I just stopped running tubes altogether because I got tired of buying them all and tearing them up. So $11.99 and quicker.
Yeah, that's $7.49 in the eighth. And since we're talking about primarily people trying to pass tech for the no-name nationals, that's $7.49.
That's a bit slow, to be honest with you. That would be capturing a majority of your cars in the world that would be at the racetrack. That's my opinion.
That would be the quickest third of what we had there.
Think about it. You go buy a brand new Mustang right now, probably runs that number.
Right.
It's got rubber valve stems.
They'll run in the eights. They'll run down in the eights. No, maybe even an 8.0. It's pretty close. Anybody else have any? I'm going to put a note on here for steel valve stems because that's if we need any clarification, we have it.
Yeah, so Andrew Nelson's saying even that you'll get kicked out of every track up in the Northeast if you have if you don't have steel valve stems. So really? I guess that must be a thing, and I never run into that before, ever. I've never seen that.
I've always had them, so
so did I. I just put them in because it was so much easier.
I would imagine I'd get kicked out of every state in the Northeast if I lived there. So, maybe it has something to do with what they think of you. I don't know. Yeah, Travis is saying that his stock Scat Pack ran $11.93. So that's
with rubber valve stems, guaranteed.
Mopar Jeff, we already covered that earlier. What the expectations are for battery hold down. If you were not here then, a bungee cord is not a sufficient battery hold down. Deke wants to see 3/8 inch studs bolts with something like a 1.5 or 1.25 piece of angle, a real battery hold down.
However, if it's in its bone stock location and has the original hold down in place and it's in good condition, I'll let that go.
So like the GM one, the little foot thing that went down against the tray.
Yeah, that's great battery hold down.
Yep. Stock location. Stock
stock,
tray.
but that's for stock location.
Right. Yeah, I know. Deke would have a stroke if he saw the battery hold down in my swinger.
Was it C-clamp?
It's worse than that.
Yes, no. John, you should have seen some of the junk in the Midwest. I mean, the stuff up there would just rust out so bad. You'd have a battery hold up, right? And it's like, there's nothing under it, right?
Put a milk carton under it. Put a milk carton under it.
Yeah.
I like that. You need that on the VW Beetle because they would put the battery under the rear seat and it would rust out really bad.
Yeah.
And it got to where those got so bad that you could hit a bump and the battery could go through the floor on those cars.
Oh, yeah. I've seen it before where they actually come out going over like railroad tracks or bumps in the road.
Absolutely. That's a bad thing about the rust belt.
Oh, great question from Jeff. You guys are doing awesome at reminding me and cueing me on things I never thought about asking. Mopar Jeff asks, do return springs on throttle?
It's a great idea.
Yeah, that's actually what's required.
Mandatory. And you know what? I like the way you phrased it, on throttle. So not just on your Holly, but on your fuel-injected throttle bodies too. They require 2 springs as well.
Yeah, most of them actually already have a spring on the linkage, generally attached to the throttle body.
So does a Holly.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, so does a
so does a Quadrajet.
Kenny
okay.
Kenny Whidden, you're right, but I mean okay. So look, everybody who should be running a transmission shield should be running a billet drum and a bolt-in sprag, so they don't need it, right? So it's kind of that
Right.
catch-22. So the question, that's a good question while we're at it. And what ET or whatnot do you need to have a shield on your automatic transmission? We've already addressed having a blow-proof bell housing and a manual. What about an automatic?
Okay. I believe it'd be 730.
Okay.
Calls for a 2.14. That's the trans shield.
Excellent. So that's where you need a trans shield or blanket or whatnot, right?
Right.
And again, I'm just telling you, it's nothing to do with the rules. I'm just telling you, why you need that. Yeah, you really should have if your transmission needs a bolt-in sprag, billet drums, all these are great things to keep from having to need the shield, but you need the shield too.
Right.
Andrew Nelson is saying 100 miles per hour in the 8th is 672. So they use the 100-mile-an-hour speed to enforce the valve stem.
That sounds more realistic. I would have to say that's more realistic.
Yeah, that's a quick car right there. That's a quick car. That is not the majority of what we have. This is a valid question. Blake's asking, Bad Tree Productions, Blake, how much oil can I have leaking from the rear main seal before I fail tech?
Well, Blake, if it gets on my shoes, we're going to have a bad day.
It failed.
It failed.
Yeah.
He's got a big block now, so it's probably going to leak.
Scarlett here is scrubbing the book good for us. So shield meeting SFI spec 639 and quicker on any vehicle running 999 and quicker in a quarter, 639 in the 8th.
And that's a 4.1 shield, right?
That sounds more like what I'm thinking.
I was going to say that a lot of things happen at 999 is the magic number.
Yeah.
Unless you're running a Hellcat.
That's moving on. I think this has been really productive. I mean, it seems like these guys are asking really good questions and bringing up really good points. I think this is going to be the live that we're going to try to refer people to throughout the year to get their tech questions answered. Chucky, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send Deke your video for some constructive critique about that particular car passing tech because I think it would be useful. And we'll come back to that. It's on my list.
Is that one going to have like roofing nails fall out of the quarter panel?
Well, I don't know. But that's one I think is going to be an interesting case study for passing tech.
Well, that was last year's earmark for the No Name Nationals when we did the first pass on the track and there was like roofing nails on the track. What was the other stuff?
There was a few things on the track
besides connecting rod pieces, but there was literally like a bunch of stuff that you would normally not find on the track.
Okay, One-Eyed Cat here has a good question. What fuel cell? What can it be made of? And what straps or bolts are needed? And I'll tell you what he has. He has a gas tank from a semi truck that's been cut in half, and he only uses a 20-gallon end of it in the trunk of his car. That's his fuel cell.
Okay, so that needs to be it needs to be mounted lower than the fender wells, the top of the fender wells.
Needs to have a vent, right?
It needs to have a vent.
Right.
Oh, and a rollover, a check valve.
A check valve in it.
And didn't we say no more than 1 foot in the aggregate of rubber hose from the tank?
No, that's total of the whole car.
Total. Yeah, I said in the aggregate, no more than 1 foot of rubber hose all together. Added up, any little pieces added up, no more than 1 foot total from the tank to the engine.
Right.
So, and the mounting straps, and sure it doesn't have flanges, 1/8 inch by 1 inch straps, top and bottom, bolted or welded to the frame and trunk.
I'm not sure what Steven's asking here. Having an engine diaper necessary for the worst oil down award winner. Well, it doesn't matter because you don't know you're going to win that one until you push it too far and find out, right?
Right.
Blake is asking, does Deke certify cages?
I can do that.
Okay. The answer is yes. And I'll throw something in there. If you plan to get a cage certified at the event, it'd be a good idea to get there early or give us a heads up because we're trying to make tech work very efficient this year.
Yeah, because to certify a cage, it takes a little bit more than a standard going over for the normal tech.
The safety tech, yeah.
Right.
You know, one thing I'll say about all of this stuff we're talking about, getting your cars ready to pass tech in general, I'll tell you this. There might be a lot of little things that a lot of people have to do to get them all ready for this. But you know what? Once all of those things are done,
They're
your
done.
car now passes tech. You don't have to do this again and again and again. Your car is now safer. You won't have problems going to other tracks. This is a good thing. Yeah, it might be a lot for a lot of people to get out of the way all at once, but once it's done, it's done. And it might save your life.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the icing on the cake there. It'll save your ass.
Icing on the cake. Not only will you pass tech at No Name Nationals, I would hate for you to have a terrible wreck, say, in October at your local track. And it's like, well, you know, I hated to have a wreck after the No Name Nationals. I got all this ready to go to that one event. But then I decided to go to a bracket race the next month, and I got in a bad wreck. And you know what? I still have my feet because I had my transmission blanket on.
Exactly.
Good. That'll be the thing that's like, it was all worth it. Okay, here's a good question here. Junkyard D. Can you clarify braided line or shielding requirements for fuel line passing by the bell housing?
Shielding requirements.
Well, no, I don't know how fast is his vehicle. Braided line, true braided line is sufficient. Steel line or aluminum line tubing is sufficient.
I think rubber and nylon line would not be like is the ones that you start getting sketchy with, right? Like, well, rubber period is sketchy in there anyway.
Yeah, we don't want that on there. And then
Dallas, when you say nylon, are you talking about the braided jacket nylon?
Yeah, a lot of those, like it'd be part stores nylon jacketed line. It's not really. It's meant to be like braided stainless steel, but it's a half-ass version of it, I guess is what you would call it. It would be the half-ass version of braided stainless steel line.
right.
The reason why that the braided stainless steel line came out was those were lines left over from military aircraft. That's actually AN line, which stands for Army Navy, right? And that was on virtually every fitting in a hydraulic or pneumatic system on a government military aircraft.
And fuel lines too.
Fuel lines, all of the lines were braided stainless steel.
Yep. And that AN line like that with the braided stainless, it's got a Teflon liner in it. Yeah. Seamless tube throughout. So it's pretty protected. You'd have to hit it pretty hard to tear it up.
If you've ever tried to cut it with anything but like a cutoff wheel, you'll know why they used it. And then
Absolutely.
also wear a thimble on every finger.
Oh yeah, because those little wires, they're sharp.
They're needles.
Ask me how I know.
Yeah, I've had one up to the first knuckle before.
Yeah, too. Remember, too, one thing about braided hose. So there's two components going on there. One of them is to help you with the pressure resistance of the hose, but the other is abrasion. So there's two functions going on there. So where that braided nylon may help you sufficiently with, the pressure on the hose, like say a transmission line pressure, something like that. It may not be sufficient for abrasion resistance, like a bell housing blow up or something like that. I think that's
Right.
kind of what Dallas is getting at there.
Right.
Yeah, there was actually another question up here. What did I just miss? Streetcar Chronicles Ryan was asking, can you have a chromoly cage that's been migged in past tech? I don't know if it'll even take, will it?
It's okay. So the NHRA's backed off on that deal some. If it's a true chromoly cage and it's MIG'd, no. But they've got a tubing out now that's a moly derivative. It's called Docol 8. DOCOL, Docol 8. And it can be MIG'd.
Oh,
but
it
that
has
stuff,
all the properties of the moly.
Right. But it's also very expensive, and there's one dealer in the United States over in Indy.
Probably works for the NHRA.
Yeah. AED, I think, is the name of the company that sells it.
Well, here's the interesting thing that I found out was that when chromoly cages first came out, the whole purpose of them was to be it is supposed to be welded together with a gas welder.
A torch and coat hanger.
Yeah,
I've seen a lot of them put together that way. If you're good at it,
that's the way it was intended to be done. So I don't see why you couldn't still do that today. But as long as you're really good at gas welding, because it's easy to screw things up with gas welding.
Sure.
If you're not good at it. But
here's a question from Kyle here, Cultured Redneck Garage. What about fiberglass seats? I know some places don't care and other places don't want them unless it's reinforced with half-inch tube. I think he comes from the dune buggy world. I'm not sure. But what about that? Is there anything about fiberglass seats?
Not that I know of.
If they were good enough for pro stock in the 70s, they're good enough for today.
That's what I would certainly think. And how fast is the car?
Yeah, this year from each year to year, as we go through tech and we get these things together, we'll probably have more and more people ready when they get there and fewer questions. So this is a lot at one time, but it's worth it. I think this is very productive.
Oh, see, Andrew Nelson's saying chromoly gets brittle if MIG'd the wrong way. That's why TIG is required. There are specific weld procedures for MIG chromoly onto the steel base plates. See, that's where I've seen it is they've developed cracks. If you MIG, what you're doing is you're just shooting yourself in the foot. You're pretty much just putting a cage in to have it taken out. And I've done that. Trust me. I did it with a mild steel cage, and I had booger-eating redneck Clyde weld the sucker in. And next thing you know, I show up at the track with my cage, and I'm all happy, and it doesn't pass tack. And I'm going home and cutting my cage out, and I'm calling booger-eating redneck Clyde to let him know that I'd like my $500 back, right?
So we have two good questions here that fit together. John Cope says you should run your fuel line on the outside of the frame. First Responder Garage is thinking, well, I was thinking about it, but maybe the frame protects it on the inside. So where is the best place, and are there any rules about where you run your fuel line, your hard line?
Well, I mean, on the nitro cars and the top alcohol cars, stuff like that, they run it down the inside of the frame, but they'll run a steel tube over it where it passes by the bell housing.
Ah, okay.
You follow me? That way,
Yeah.
and then they've got a $4,200 titanium bell housing. So if that clutch and flywheel can get out of that, it's going to have to work pretty hard to get through the steel tube to get down to the fuel line.
Yeah, but on your regular street car, just run it away from heat areas and pinch points.
Right.
That's all you're looking for.
And support it in enough places where it doesn't abrade.
Right. And trust me, pinch points is an easy one for people to do, especially when you get up to the front of the car and you're not thinking about the A-arms.
Right.
Articulating.
It's something worth mentioning at this point, too, because I don't want people to get overwhelmed. Understand, if you're bringing your street car that you've not raced before, you don't have a lot of race experience with it, most of these things, a lot of them aren't going to apply to you. So for a lot of you guys that may have a street car that runs 14s in the quarter mile, and when you get there, and let's say it runs 9 and 10 seconds in the eighth or high eights or something, a lot of these things that we're getting into with cages and stuff like that certainly aren't going to apply to you. But we're definitely looking. That's a good point. Let's ask Deke that. What of these things are universal for all cars? I'd imagine like battery hold down, coolant overflow, helmet. What's
the rubber fuel line?
For all cars?
The rubber fuel line.
What you mentioned, like the rubber fuel line, water instead of antifreeze. That overflow. I had a couple guys, battery hold downs. Yeah. I had a couple guys had to make their own coolant overflows at the track. And the one guy, he did it right there in tech. He had stuff in the trunk. It was a 20-ounce pop bottle, plastic pop bottle. And he bored a hole in the cap, and he had a hose and all that, and zip ties, and he put it in there real nice and neat. And I'm like, cool. I'm good with that.
Yep.
So
Ryan's asking a question that he's asking for a friend, I'm guessing. So if a car that runs low fives and high fours shows up and has all the rules met except a chromoly cage MIG welded, will it be shut down?
Probably not, Ryan. Just to be honest with you, it's going to be hard to tell that you MIG welded that cage in. It's just when it starts to crack and it doesn't pass tech then at that point. It's going to be obvious that the cage is welded and no one's going to want to touch it. Man, I'm telling you, I'm hoping you did not MIG weld in a chromoly cage.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. Now you know how to do the cage when you do the cage.
Well, there's a lot of things that I've done with MIG welding chromoly, not on the cage itself, the brackets and things like that. I'll MIG it in a MIG root and then do a TIG cover. Just for the convenience factor, it's easier to MIG than it is TIG when you're trying to hold something and you're only working with two hands. So but the TIG cover does a nice job.
Pure Pontiac Garage is saying there that factory GM A body has over 12 inches of hose. And I believe it has exactly 12 inches of hose because it has 3 rubber 4-inch joints. Right? The one from the tank to the line on the body. Then it has the one underneath the driver's side door. And then it's got one from the frame rail to the fuel pump. From the fuel line of the frame rail to the fuel pump. But I guess that depends which one you have. But I think that's only 3 4-inch joints, which is 12 inches. And I think that's why it became the standard number, was because there was multiple cars out there with that same kind of setup.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Rather than try to figure out how to avoid complying with a rule, if you just do it, it's done, and you're safer for it.
And I can tell you, if you're running neoprene hose and you're running gasohol in it, it's breaking down the inside of that neoprene. I'll guarantee it is, because I've seen what it leaves inside the carburetor. It's like black chalk.
Let's see here. Unfinished Project says he'll run the grinder. Oh, there was a good question up here from First Responder Garage about, let's see here. First Responder Garage is asking, does a drive shaft loop have to be standalone, or can you use a cross member that integrates it? So, for example, let's say you have a cross member that integrates the drive shaft loop.
It still needs a loop over the top.
It also has to be like a certain distance from the cross member, and most of the cross members aren't bolted 6 inches or so after the transmission.
Right, correct.
Right? So I want to say the minimum distance is like 6 inches of that U joint. It's of the front U joint, right? Because you're trying to prevent the car from doing a pole vault situation when the front U joint breaks.
Exactly.
So Cope is asking 2 throttle springs. We've already addressed that. 2 throttle springs are a good idea. Are they mandatory, Deke, that we run 2 throttle return springs?
Yes.
Okay.
And I will count the one on the throttle shaft. If it's got a extension spring, and I take that off, and I can open the throttle body, and it closes on its own with its factory spring, which is a wind-up spring, I will count it also.
Russell from Outfits Garage has a good question. He says, do I need to change the nylon braided fuel line?
No. As far as I know, no.
If it's nylon braided, that's pretty decent stuff. It's a lot better than neoprene
or rubber. Yeah.
This is a good question here, because I saw some of this was relevant last year. What size plates or reinforcement are required for bucket seats installed where a bench seat was with no inner frame structure? And let's just say this could apply to anybody that just say makes a sheet metal floor from scratch. What should they have mounting their seats? What kind of structure should they have to mount their seats to the floor?
Man, that's not even part of tech usually.
But that's a good question.
It is a good question.
Because like self-tappers is a terrible idea for that.
Oh,
right?
Yeah.
Right.
You would want, and if I was just going on a limb, this is an engineering type question for how much surface area and bolt size that you would need. But normally, if you look at the factory bolts on most cars, what are they? Either 7/16 or ½ inch, and then they're fine thread, right?
Well, that's for the belts.
For the belts, yeah, and then
for the seat is usually a 8 millimeter or 5/16.
Right. Oh,
but,
yeah, you're right.
But if you're putting any kind of reinforcement plates under the rails, the adjustment rails for your seat, they would need to be 1/8 inch thick, and I would say twice the width of the adjuster rail, and probably extend a couple inches past the ends of the adjuster rail. So it's fully supported all the way along both sides.
I love that.
Right.
So basically, twice the width of your tracker where it mounts down where the foot is. You need a minimum of 8 millimeter / 5/16 bolts.
Right.
And it's 1/8 inch, minimum of 1/8 inch thick.
Yes.
It's really good, actually.
A lot of that is it all is kind of in the same science of each other, because when you look at the seat belts are rated for, like, say, 10 or 20,000 pounds, but that number comes from inertia, right? So it's like a 20-pound human being traveling at 80 or 100 miles an hour, right? That belt's going to hold you. Now the seat is almost the same kind of situation, but like Deke was saying, you have 4 points instead of like a seat belt having 2 or 3 points. And then so it's going to be, your seat would have to hold essentially like 10,000 pounds of inertia of
Right.
you getting snapped, right?
Right. And that's why they make seat hardware. It's grade 8 bolts.
Yeah.
Or 10.9 on your metrics.
I'll just throw this up here just in general, not getting anything specific with it. But Andrew Nelson says if you know you're going to be fast, they're basically what he's saying here is because we're trying to give you guys a set of rules. We're covering the insurance, the track, we have the safety equipment, that kind of stuff. And he's basically saying in the spirit of that, you guys as the community, try to do your part. Try to do your part to get your stuff in order to bring to the event, because we're going to do our part in order to host you. So it's a two-way street, and we're just trying to get people to cooperate in that spirit because we want everybody to have a good, safe time.
Right. That's the
with
whole
that,
point of it.
I'll just leave it at
And and the number one thing is have fun. It's supposed to be fun.
Absolutely. Okay, Pure Pontiac Garage. He wants clarification. So this is good. He wants clarification. My car has over 12 inches of rubber fuel line from the factory. Is it going to pass tech? Pure Pontiac Garage.
And it's a stock vehicle, right?
He said stock. So I'm assuming that he says no more than he has the factory arrangement.
I'd say he's going to probably pass tech. And he probably passed tech before, right?
I don't think he's made it to the last one.
No, he's new. This will be his first year.
Okay.
I wouldn't say he's going to have a problem at all if it's a factory setup stuff.
Right.
And it looks to me like he's got some kind of tri-power Pontiac, which it may have had more than 12 inches of rubber line.
It could have.
Because it's a tri-power. It's not like anything that came from GM with like a Quadrajet on it had a steel fuel line, right? That came from the pump and went directly to the one fitting on the carburetor. But now you're talking 3 separate carburetors with 3 different lines, and
Right.
they all go to a log system that I believe had rubber connections in the log.
Sure.
Yeah. So,
but I can tell you, if I'm standing there looking at that fuel line and it's got cracks in it, you're going to replace it.
It's probably best just to replace those now with some new rubber.
Yeah.
Right.
One thing I'll say is, and you do what you want to do with your car and all of that, and I understand if you want to keep it original, but man, if the stuff is old and if it has cracks in it, we're talking about gasoline here, right? I mean, if you're going to do it, just go ahead and do it and bring it up to a safer code. I mean, unless you have some reason that you really want to keep it really accurate, like show car stuff. Yeah.
I'll tell you, because a majority of the people in here, let's be real, okay? And I'm not upset or anything, but think of it like this: you're a father, and your daughter is going to go on a date with her new boyfriend, and you ask, "Do you have a condom?" And the kid pulls out a 20-year-old condom with cracks in it. Would you be happy? Right? I mean, that's literally the same thing that you're looking at here.
Well, It takes a lot longer for that fire to burn out.
Battery Productions, we're going to get into track prep and such at another time. This is all about passing tech inspection. Okay? So
and also
we'll get to that. But it will be prepped. We're not doing no prep. We will have a prep track. And
I was going to tell Dallas too. And if you think a broken mirror is bad luck, break a condom once.
Oh yeah, that's a 20-year experience, right?
Yeah.
Does anybody else have any tech questions? Go ahead and get your tech questions together while we have Deke and Dallas here together. Real quick, I'll just plug something since I can. Here in 25 minutes, I got a premiere on this channel. So be on this same channel 15 minutes after the live is over. Travis Bell, Dallas, and I, and Professor P, and Clint from Clint Street Machines, we all went to visit Travis Bell at Celebrity Machines, and we got a tour of his place, and he does all the Star Car license plates. And that video will be right after this, 15 minutes after the live is over at 10:15 Eastern Time, 9:15 Central. So just getting that plug in there while you guys are getting your last tech questions together. Does anybody have anything else? We have a few more minutes here. I think this live's been very productive. I think we've gotten a lot of questions answered. Thanks, Sling Buff. I appreciate that. But yeah, if you have anything else, this is a good place. I want this to be the live people refer to when they have questions. Bear Rose is asking a question here. Are aftermarket air ride airbags okay? So if the car has air ride suspension.
Sure.
Yep.
That goes hand in hand with that low frame question.
Yep.
And Big Belly's asked us a few times. Sorry, we can't always grab them all. The chat's pretty brisk. What's the rule on battery relocation to the trunk? So, Deke, if you want to recap that, because there were a few guys that have batteries moved to the trunk.
If you move your battery to the trunk, you need a hold down that's 3/8 bolts or all thread with an 1.25 inch minimum, like angle iron, to strap the battery down to the frame. And if you do that, you need to put a battery disconnect accessible from outside the back of the car.
And you got to have the barrier. Right?
And also, yeah, you need it either needs to be strapped in a battery box, but preferably where your back seat was, you need a bulkhead of some sort, wood, aluminum, steel, whatever, so that if you get upside down, none of the fluid from the battery can get to you.
Oh, John dropped.
John dropped.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's it for the live tonight.
I've got
have like 8 minutes left anyway.
I've got 5% battery left on my phone.
Well, I guess it sounds like a good time to call this an evening then, folks. So I'm sure John would want you to run over. It'll give you enough time to hit the restroom, get your hands washed up, grab a bag of chips, and be back here for his scheduled premiere that's happening with John Wilburn from the John Wilburn channel. Oh, here he's back.
He's back.
I'm back.
I was just plugging your channel and your premiere that's happening here in 15 minutes after this one.
Thanks, man. Yeah, just we're all good. Does anybody have any last questions? And we'll get to those. But I'll tell you what. I want to really thank the chat. They've great questions tonight. Everybody,
lots of good questions. Yeah.
Yep.
Super serious about wanting to pass tech, and I think we've gotten really all the hot ticket items. I've made a list of all the questions that we needed to get to about riders and age on the track, and all the questions about seat belts and cages and drive shaft loops and all that good stuff. Unfinished Project is asking a question. I think he just says plexiglass ? So what about plexiglass or Lexan windows? That's a good question in case it applies to anybody.
No plexiglass, so I don't have a problem with Lexan.
Okay. Lexan's generally stronger than your factory window.
Right. And more expensive, too.
That, too.
It is lighter, but run it for 2 years and tell me how much you still love it, especially if you race at night. Because it's a bitch to clean and without scratching it and hazing it up. But it will save some weight. But it's perfectly legal, all locations.
Okay. My race car, somebody put plexiglass windows in it, not Lexan. They put plexiglass in it.
Is it yellow?
Oh, it's non-existent. Literally, a goat jumped on the back window and broke it. You can't make this stuff up. Well, hello, 540 Racing. Where are you from, 540? Is that your engine or your area code? That's my area code.
Man, he's right down the street from the Street Fox 347. I haven't seen him yet this year.
Because Street Fox 347 lives about 8 miles from me.
No, I don't know if he is or not. I'm just making that up. But I knew that Street Fox lived near you.
Yeah.
I haven't seen him yet this year, though.
I have seen Street Fox. He's been busy making content. Yeah, okay. Did you change that, Street Fox? Did you change your username to 540 Racing? Yeah, see, look at that. He changed his username. I thought
And he's the same guy.
There's only one YouTuber in our community who lives anywhere near me, and it's Street Fox Mike, aka 540 Racing. All right, well, with that, looks like we're getting close to wrapping it up here. So unless anyone has any last questions, I want to thank our mods. You guys were great as always. I want to thank Deke for taking the time to meet with us tonight, because we're 250 days and an hour and change away from the No Name Nationals, but we wanted to give you guys a big heads up. So thank you, Deke, for taking the time. Thank Dallas.
Thanks for having me.
Thank Dallas. We not only we have a good long live here, we had a meeting before the live, so we really tied up Deke and Dallas's evening pretty good for you guys. Productive.
Yeah, but we don't do this but every couple of weeks, and then I think Deke, you'll probably do one more before we do the race, right? So
yeah, that'd be fine.
Yeah, it's not too much.
Yeah.
No.
So, we got one now where we have all these questions and things in one spot, and then we can do another one closer to time. We can try to answer questions in the meantime. Feel free to send us your questions. I'll get them where they need to go. If it's a question that Deke or Dallas need and you just happen to have my contact info, feel free to send it to me. I will not attempt to answer something above my pay grade, but I'm happy to get it to these guys. So I will make it easy for you to get your questions answered. Okay?
All right. Well, I'm getting out of here, guys, because my battery's about dead on my phone. So thanks, Dallas. Thanks, John. I appreciate it.
See you later,
and
Deke.
thanks all you YouTube creator guys. We'll talk to you later.
Thank you, guys. Got my premiere here at in less than 20 minutes. I'll see you all over there.
All right, I'm out of here.
Thanks, guys.
See you.